Welcome to Flutter Teacher. In this session, we will talk about Image Widget in Flutter. So without wasting time, let's get started. Flutter has given the widget called Image, using which we can display image on the screen. Image class has got 5 fantastic constructors. Each constructor has its own importance, significance, and different use. So in this video, I will talk about each of them in detail, and I will also explain the practical use of each constructor. Let's start from the constructor called Image.asset. This constructor is used to display local images available in the application. Now, what do you mean by local images? The images which are the part of asset bundle of application are known as the local images. For example, let's say we have the images to present the application icon or the images that we want to display on your onboarding screen. So such images are recommended to place as the part of asset bundle. Asset images are actually the static images. It means these images are not going to change as long as you are going to change it. For using this constructor practically, first of all, we have to create asset bundle. And for creating asset bundle, let's jump inside the application directory. Now, the name of application directory here is hello_app. Now, inside this application directory, we have to create a folder called images. Now, it is your choice. Some programmer prefers to create folder called assets, and inside that asset folder, they go on creating the folder called images. I prefer to create images folder directly inside the application directory. So make sure that this folder called images must be present outside the leaf, not inside the leaf folder. Now, whatever images that we want to use as local images in the application must be placed inside this image folder. So let me jump inside this folder. So I have already added some images for you. Now you can see we have the image called default_png. Then we have two images, img1 and img2 in the form of GIF. We have the image called writer user1, user2, user3 in the form of JPG. Now we must configure these images in the pubspec.yaml file so that it can be used in the application. For this, let me open the file called pubspec.yaml. So let's go here and open the file pubspec.yaml. Just scroll down a little bit. Now you will find some option called images here. So by default, this is commented. So just uncomment this option. And what you have to do, you have to just add the name of your image here. So in this case, I have the folder called images. So let me write here, let's say user1.jpg, and let me copy and paste for another one. Say I will put here user2.jpg and save this file. Make sure that the name that I have written, that is images here, is actually the name of folder that we have in our application directory. So if we have some different name, like say we have the name called XYZ. So instead of writing these images, we have to put that specific folder name called XYZ here. Now let me open main.dart and let me show my device screen. Now inside the main.dart, we have this basic Flutter application code written here. Now let me jump inside the center widget, and for the center widget, let me place a child, and as a child, I want to use the widget called Image.asset. Let me write here Image.asset, and now as asset, we have to write the path of your asset. So in this case, the path is images/user1.jpg. For solving this error, we have to remove cons from this MATLAB. Let me delete here and let me format the code and save it. Now you can see we have got this image called user1.jpg. Now let me change this user1 to user2, and when I save it, you can see I have got this user2 on my screen. And now when I use user3.jpg, you can see I'm getting error here. The reason here is in this file called pubspec.yaml, we have configured only two images called user1.jpg and user2.jpg. It means I am allowed to use only two images from my asset bundle. So if we want to use more images, then we have to configure these images one by one here. Now there's a one trick. If you want to use all the images present inside this images folder, so don't write the name of each image individually. Just do one thing here. Just drop the name of this image and just put the image and slash, save this file, and now this technique allows you to access all the images present inside this images folder. Now let me go back to main and let me save the code, and you can see here it will load image3 for me. Let me explore some more properties. First of all, I'm adding comma here, and let me use the property called width. Basically, width allows us to specify width of this image. So in this case, I will use the width of 300 pixel. Then let me use the property called height. So I will use say height of 400 pixel. So let's format the code and save it. Let me change this image from user3 to say default.png. Let me write here default.png. Let me save it. When we have the PNG images, it's possible to apply custom color for this. So in order to apply custom color, we want to use property called color here. For this, let me pass the some color. So I can write here color dot, let's say blue here. When I save it, you can see this specific image now will appear in the blue color. Now instead of blue, let me write here red. And when I save, you can see image appears in the red color. Let me delete this code and let me change the image from this default.png to let's say user1.jpg. When I save it, you can see it will load user1.jpg for me. But by mistake, if I change this image from user1 to let's say user11, and if I save it, you can see I'm getting error on the screen. Now, instead of getting this error message, if you want to get some custom component or let's say some custom design, then we have to use property called error builder here. Now for this error builder, we have to specify the function, and this function must have three different parameters. First one is the build context. Second parameter is in the form of object, which is actually the error message here. So let me write here error. Then the last parameter is in the form of stack trace. So let me write here stack trace, and let's use the variable name is stack trace. And this last parameter, that is stack trace, is in the form of nullable. And now here we have to return the widget that should be presented instead of this specific error message. So in this case, I will write here, let's say return, and let me pass some text. Let's say I can write here no such image. Let me save it, and you can see instead of getting these error messages, I'm getting the message called no such image. Instead of presenting a text here, we can write any specific widget here. So let me write here the image asset. So we can write here image.asset, and in this case, let me pass here images slash. So we can write default dot png. So you can see when no image is available, so it will show me this image called default.png. And in case if I'm having some image, let's say if I have the image called user3, when I save it, you can see I'm getting this specific image. And if I'm changing the spelling, let's say I'm writing here user35, and when I save, you can see I'm getting this default image here. Now let me explain the property for repeat. For this, we have to delete this error builder from here, and instead of wrapping our image inside the center, we have to wrap it inside the widget called container. And for this container, I'm specifying the width as say double dot infinity. That is, I'm using the maximum width as it is possible. So I will use the height again. So in this case, I will also use the height as double dot infinity. So why I have wrapped this inside this container? The reason here is if you want to apply the repeat property, that is the repeat option. So there has to be some space in the x-axis and y-axis. So if we use the container and if we provide the infinite height and infinite width, then we have got much more space to perform repetition. Now instead of this specific image, let me change it to let's say default image. So I can do right here default.png, and when I save it, you can see we'll get this default image on the screen. And now let me use the property called repeat. In order to apply the value for repeat, we have to use image repeat dot, let's say I will use here repeat x. It means it will repeat in x coordinate. When I save it, you can see image is repeated in a x axis. And when I change it to let's say repeat y, so this image will repeat in the y axis. And if I use the repeat option only, image will repeat in both x and y axis. Now let me explain the align property. So for this, first of all, let me delete this repeat property from here, and I need to specify some specific width and height. So in this case, I will use a width as 300 pixel and the height as again 300 pixel. Let me save it. You can see there is single image appeared on the screen. So we have the option called here align. So that allows us to align the image inside its parent. So for this, we have to use the object of alignment. So I'm writing here alignment dot. Now inside this alignment, we have got total 9 options. Now let's understand what are these 9 different options available. So we have this top left, then top center, top right, then center left, center right, bottom left, bottom center, and bottom right. So we can align our image at these specific 9 options. So let's try it with practical. So let me use here, let's say image center. When I use it, you can see your image will align in center. Now in order to get this some feeling, we have to apply some color here. So when I use color, let's see what to write some color here. So let's use colors.red, and you can imagine here that image is available inside the center of container. And when I change it to, let's say, bottom left, then you can see image is now available at the bottom left corner of the container. And let me change it to, let's say, top right, then image will go at the top right corner of the container. Now let me explain the property called fit. So let me delete this property from here, and let me change the image to, let's say, user2.jpg, and let me save the code here. Now what I need to do, let me increase the height little bit. So I'm using height for 500 pixel here. Let me use here feed property, and value for this feed are specified using the enum called box feed. Let me write here box feed, and on this box feed we have some options called, let's say, content. This is the default value we have, then cover, field, feed width, feed height, and none, and scale down. Okay, let me use here option called field. So when we use field, so field property allows image to fill as much space it is available here. So in this case, you can see image is filled with the height called 500 and the width of 300. Now instead of this, if I use the option called cover, so what the cover will do, cover will try to get as much as possible image, but in this case your image is not changing the aspect ratio. It will keep the aspect ratio as it is. However, you might have observed here, in case of when we use the field, your aspect ratio get disturbed, but in case of cover, your aspect ratio never get disturbed. Now let me use the content option here. This content option allows to display entire content of the image as possible as in the large area. So in this case, you can see the maximum possible content can be displayed in the width of 300 pixel. So it has showing the width of 300 pixel for the image, and rest of the image part is now blank. That's why it is filled with the red color of container. Let me use the value called here, let's say field width. So it will try to get the complete width as possible. When we use the option called field height, so it will try to get the complete height as possible without disturbing the aspect ratio. Now let me explain the constructor called Image.network. Using this constructor, we can display the image on the screen based on the specific URL. It means this constructor gets the image over the internet and display it on the screen. Now let's understand the practical example of using this constructor. Now consider your application is interacting with Firebase, and your application has uploaded some images in the Firebase storage. Now it's time to display those images on the screen. Now in this case, we cannot use the image.asset because these are not the local images, rather these are the images stored at your Firebase site. Now in this case, we have to specify the image URL, that is the specific URL of images at the Firebase site, and we have to write this URL here, and this constructor will load that image in your screen. So make sure that while using this constructor, you must have internet connection by means of, say, Wi-Fi or whatever source that you have. Consider one more example. Let's say our application is interacting with the server by means of web services or whatever source is available. Now in this case, we have the images stored at server side, and now we want to load or we want to show these images on the screen. So in this case, we are bound to use this specific constructor called Image.network. Now let me use this constructor in the code. For this, first of all, let me delete this width and height because I will go with the default width and height of image, and I don't want color of this image. Now instead of using this image.asset, let me change it to image.network. So I can write that image.network. And now we need to specify some URL here. Let me write here single quote. And in order to get the image, I will visit the website called Pixel here. And let me get the first image. Let's right click here and click on the option called copy image address. Come back to VS Code. Let me show my device screen here, and let me paste this URL into single quote. Okay, let me save the code and I'm good to go. Now similar to image.asset constructor, the image.network constructor has also got the properties called width, height, color, error builder, repeat, feed, and so on. Now let me explain Image.file constructor. This constructor allows us to display the images present in your device. It's important to note that the asset images and the file images are totally different, because asset images are actually the images which are part of your application, but file images are not the part of your application. These are the images present in your device already, or it might be the image that you capture with your phone, or you might get some download images and so on. Now let's understand the practical use of using this image.file constructor. Let's say someone asks you to create the image. Let's say someone asks you to create the application like WhatsApp. You might have observed in case of WhatsApp, when we get some image, we click on the image, that image get downloaded locally in the device, and next time when we tap on that image, your image won't get loaded from the internet. Rather, this image is stored locally in the device, and this image will be loaded from the device itself. So you might have observed, if your internet is turned off, even if it's possible to load that specific image. So how we can achieve such a functionality in Flutter? So in this case, once your image is downloaded, or whatever source that you are getting your image, so what we'll do, we'll store your image in the file itself, that is inside the device directory. Now next time when we use that specific image, we have to pass that image in the form of file, and that image will get loaded on the screen. Let's understand one more example. Let's say we have created some application in which user is capturing images using the camera, and whatever captured images are there, these are stored inside some folder. Now we need to store the names of this file locally in the device. For this we might use the shared preferences, or might be the SQLite. Now in this case, when next time user wants this image, so we must get that image from the file, because this image is not at all a part of asset. It's not even present in the network. It's present in the device itself. So in this specific situation, we can't use image.asset, not even image.network can help you. The only constructor that can help you is the image.file. You can see this constructor requires the image in the form of file object. It means we have to access the file system in your device. For this, we must take a permission, and this permission has to be configured in the file called Android manifest. So let's understand how to open this file. So we have to jump here in the option called Explorer. Then here you will find a folder called Android. So click on this Android, then click on the folder called App, then click on this src folder, then click on the folder called Main, and inside this main folder you will find a file called Android manifest.xml. So double click on this file will get open for you. Now before this application tag, what we have to do, we have to copy this specific code that I have copied for you. Let's paste this code here. So this specific code gives an access for the reading of your external storage. So in this case, we just want the reading permission. That's why I'm using here reading permission. So I'm not using writing permission, because we don't need it at all. Most of the Android devices don't allow us to access the storage directly, even if it is configured in the Android manifest.xml. They require us to have some additional configuration so that user will enable us to access the storage manually. For getting the access permission from user, we have to add the dependency called permission handler. So let me get that dependency here. You can see I have already opened the page in pub.dev to get this dependency. Name of this dependency is called permission handler. So let me get it. So just click on installing, and let me copy this specific line, and after copying it we have to jump in offspec.yaml. So let me come here below this Cupertino icon, paste this line and save this file. Now after doing the setting, don't forget to restart your application if it is already running. I have restarted my application. Now after that, what we need to do, let me delete this child from here, because we don't want to display any image here. Let me save it. We need to import this permission handler file. So let's write here import the permission handler. The file name is permission handler.dart. Then we must modify this main. So first of all, we have to make this main as async, because we're going to use some function that has await here. So if you don't know about async and await, don't worry. In my Dart session, I will cover that one. Now ensure the widget initialization. For this, we have to write line called widget Flutter binding dot ensure initialize. Right, wait. Then we have to use a class called permissions. Let me write here permission. Then permission is basically class available inside this permission handler package. So on this we have to take permission of storage. Then over this we have to take a request. So let's make a call for request method. This basically request method allows us to request the storage. That is, it will get some pop-up message for the user. Then let me write some nice comments here. So let me put blank comments here. After making modification in the main function, it's time to use the constructor called image.file. So as a child of this container, let me use image.file. Now for this file, we have to specify the object of file. So let me create the object of file here. And in order to use this file class, we have to import the package called IO. Let me write here package called IO, that is the .IO. So that allows us to use this file object, that is the file class. Now for this file constructor, we have to specify the string that represents the location of your images or the file to use. Now the path that I have written here called storage slash emulated slash 0, this specific path is actually a path of your internal storage, that is internal memory. Instead of using this one, if you want to access your external storage such as the memory card that you might be using in your device, so instead of using 0, just you have to write 1 here. This specific thing is called a folder that is available in my device, and the pizza.jpg is the image that I want to show on the screen. So let's save the code, but you can't see any changes. So we have to restart this application here. Now you can see after restart, this application is asking me the access to storage. So just click on the button allow, and you can see it will load the image called pizza for us. Let me use image from download folder. For this, we need to delete this path, and instead of this, we have to write download folder here. Download slash the file name is dashboard. So I need to write here dashboard dot jpg. When I save this, you can see I will get this dashboard image here. Let me explain the constructor called Image.memory. This constructor allows us to display the raw kind of images. That is, it allows us to display images in the form of uint8 list. These uint8 lists are actually the fixed length 8-bit unsigned integer, and this list of integer combines to form an image in the form of a byte, or we call it as a raw image. Let me explain practical use of this constructor. Consider we want to create application where we want to have facility of image processing. Now as user go on processing the image, that process image must be displayed on the screen as user is performing the activity with the image. Now this specific image is called image in memory because the original image is available in the folder itself in your device, but every time when user is processing, that is, he might be cropping that image, he might be resizing the image, so such an image is actually present in the memory. So whenever we have the need of presenting that kind of image in the screen, so such an image must be taken from the memory. So in this case, you will find this constructor really helpful. Let's understand one more example. Now just look at this image that I have. So this is called basically a rider image, and it is showing the top view of the rider who is basically delivering some food or maybe some content somewhere. So consider we want to develop some application where we are using the Google Map, and in that map we want to track the live location of the rider. Now based on the rider's position, that is, if rider is taking a left turn, if he is taking a right turn, or he is changing the direction. So based on each and every activity that rider is doing, so that activity has to be reflected on the map. So according to that one, this specific image has to move. That is, this image has to move in left, it has to move in right. Basically, this image can't be moved because it is a normal image. This is basically a JPG image. But using the option called image in memory, that is using some image processing and using the constructor called image.memory, we can access the image in memory and we'll go on processing the image and we can move the image to left side, right side, and so on. But make sure that all the constructor that we have seen called the asset, network, and file, they are useless if you want to get this kind of facility. Only one constructor that can save you is the image.memory. Now let me use this constructor practically. For this, first of all, let me delete entire code from here. Now let me write the code from scratch. First of all, we need to import a package called material. Now, as we are using this uint8 list, we have to use the file called type underscore data. Let's import here type underscore data. We also need to import the services file. So let's write here services. Let me define a main function here. And inside this main, we have to call a function called run app. Then inside this, let me pass the object of my app here. And now in this case, the class called my app, it needs to be a stateful widget instead of the stateless. So let me create here a stateful widget and I will name this as my app. Now inside this class, instead of returning container, I'm returning here material app. So let's type here material app. And for this material app, I'm using the home property, and as a home, it's passed the object of scaffold here. And for this scaffold, we have the option called body. Inside this body, use the center widget and click place it blank. Save this code and format it properly. And we need to restart it once because we have changed the state. For storing the image, we have to create some variable here. So let me create a variable of type uint8list. I will name this variable as, let's say, raw image. And as this image is not right now ready, we'll get it later on. Let me make this image as the nullable, and let me define a function that uses image in the form of this u18, that is the encoded image. So we'll name this as void. Let's say the image name is getImage, and this function has to be asynchronous function. Let's use the async. In this case, I will access image from the asset bundle, and I will convert that image to the encoded image in the form of the uint8 list. So for this, we need some byte data. Let's use your byte data, and let's name this as a byte data. Let's use it here await. For accessing the asset bundle, we have the option called root bundle dot load. So in this load, we have to specify the name of a specific file or name of a specific image here. So let's say I will use here images slash, let's say, user1.jpg. This is what image that we have seen a few minutes before. We need to convert this byte data in the form of uint8 list. So we have to write here uint8 list. Let's name this variable as, let's say, temp image is equals to, we have to write here byte data dot buffer, and we have to convert it. So we have to write function called as uint8 list that converts your image to this specific type. Now after doing this, we have to call a function called setState because we are in the stateful widget, and I want to store this specific temp image inside this raw image. So we have to write here raw image is equals to the temp image. Now this function called getImage must be called inside the init state. So let me define a function called init state here, and let me erase this comment. And after this super.init, let me call this function called getImage. Now we need to call a constructor inside this center image. So for this center, we'll use the object called child. And now I will take a decision. Let's say whether this raw image, if this raw image, let's say if it is not equals to null, then in this case, what I will do here, we'll display the image. So let's say we have to use the Image.memory, and here we have to write this image that is say raw image. And as it is nullable image, we have to use exclamation. And if it is nullable, that is if the image is not available when it is null, then simply display the circular progress indicator. Let me format the code and let me save it properly. And you can see when I save the code, initially it will show this circular progress indicator. And as we have defined the init state function here, we have to restart it. And after restart, you will find that instead of the circular progress indicator, it will show this image called user1. Now instead of this user1 image, you can show another image. Let's say we can write here image2. Let's save it. But as we are doing changes in this image get image method, and it is called inside this init state, again we have to restart this one. Now you can see we have got this user2 image. Let me explain this constructor called the parameters constructor. For this constructor, we have to pass image in the form of image provider. You will find use of image provider in so many situations. For example, when we use a container, and for the container we have the property called decoration. So inside this decoration, we have to pass image in the form of image provider. Moreover, when we use this circular progress indicator, for that we have the property called background image, and as a background image again we have to pass this provider image. Now let me use this constructor inside the code. So for this, first of all, I need to delete everything from inside the center. And as a center, we have to use this child. And let's use this image. Inside this image constructor, we have the property called image. And for this image property, we have to pass the object of image provider. Basically, asset image, network image, file image are the image of type image providers. Inside this constructor, we have the property in the form of string that specifies the name of this specific image. In this case, let me use here images slash, let's say, user3.jpg. Let me save the code. You can see on my screen, I have got this user3.jpg. Instead of passing asset image, it's also possible to pass the network image. So let me write here network image. Now for this network image, we have to specify the URL of image that we want to show. So let's visit the website pixel and let's get some nice image here. Let's say this one. Let's copy this image address, jump in the VS Code, and now we have to paste this path here. Paste this path and save the file. You can see it will load that image for us. Let's understand one last point here, and that is about the loading time required by the constructor. Memory requires the smallest amount of time, then asset takes some more time than the memory. File requires a little bit more time than the constructor, and the network takes the much more amount than the all these constructors. That's it for this video. See you guys in the next video. If you really found this video helpful, then don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button to get my latest videos.